Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets here live on our FTN Network YouTube page. Chris Meaney hanging out with you. Always appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out here with me. Let's finish this week off strong. We are just a little over 24 hours away from some playoff football. You're listening on iTunes and Spotify. We always appreciate you guys. Smash the like button, rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend. We got a lot to talk about here on the show. We have some picks against the spread. We have some totals. We have a parlay. We have a teaser. We have some NFL props. We have some touchdown props. Going to share my one and done lineup, my strategy. Playoff rankings are live over at ftnfantasy.com. Best ball, draft and hold, one and done, all that stuff over at ftnfantasy.com. Projections for the week as well. If you're into NFL DFS, we're going to take care of you over at ftndaily.com. Also going to share my NFL playoff bracket, and that's where we're going to start. If you have any questions at all, some, one and done strategy, some playoff format, any kind of questions, you guys can always reach out at Chris Meaney. Slide into the DMs on X, on Twitter, meanstreetsftn@gmail.com. You guys know the drill by now. You can also leave a comment or a question in the comment section as well here, always circling back on these videos. So if you have any questions, you're hanging out live, you can leave them there. I'm going to get into the playoff bracket now, and I just got to say, I'm a coward. I am a straight up coward. I wish that I had the stones to come in here and have the Los Angeles Rams going very deep in my playoff bracket. I have this feeling about LA. It's not just a fuzzy, warm feeling. I have some numbers to kind of back it up, but at the same time, I guess I don't have the stones to have this team going deep into the playoffs. But we have talked a lot about them on the show. Before I show the bracket, I think that they're the best long shot squad at the moment at 50-1. We talked 70-1. I tweeted it out multiple times. 5-1 for them to earn a playoff spot via the wild card, which we did get here on the show and over at ftnbets.com. And again, I do believe that 50-1 is a very interesting pick for a team a couple years removed from winning the Super Bowl, having the experience. Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, Kyron Williams this year has given them something that they haven't had over the past couple of years, a ground game, and also the emergence of Puka Nacua, who set all kinds of records this year as a rookie wide receiver. It's going to be a very tough path if they can beat Detroit, for a team to have all those road victories. We've seen it before, of course, but, beating Detroit and then having to play San Fran and then most likely set up to play the Cowboys on top of the Super Bowl. But more love for them in just a little bit. But I just wanted to start by saying, if you are looking for a long shot pick here, I think the Rams are certainly in play. And they're a team that I feel a little bit better about them beating a team like San Fran as opposed to Dallas beating San Fran. I know that Shanahan's had McVay's number through the entire past 9-10 regular season games. I think it was 9 in a row before week 18, but again, nobody really played in that game. But the playoffs have been a different story. We know McVay got the best of Shanahan a couple years ago en route to the Super Bowl. Again, so with all of that said, I actually don't have the Rams in my bracket making a significant run, but I am going to talk about some of my picks here as well. So just want to say what up to the crews we normally do here on our YouTube page. Nice little family we've created here, and I love the support and the feedback from you guys as well. So Nathan's in the house, so ready for some playoff football. Should be a fantastic weekend of playoff football as well. You guys are all aware of the matchups, but it does get underway here tomorrow as we start with the AFC matchups in the NFL with the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans at 4:30 Eastern in Houston, Miami, and Kansas City on Peacock. This sounds like it's going to be real cold. It's going to be real cold in Kansas City. That is at 8 Eastern. And then Sunday sounds like it'll be real nasty in Buffalo. Some nasty weather. There's talk about potentially moving the game to Cleveland. A lot of snow and a lot of wind, which I do believe favors the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have seen a team beat the Buffalo Bills throwing the football 3 times in recent memory. On Sunday, we'll switch over to the NFC with the Cowboys at home at 4:30 Eastern against the Green Bay Packers. Of course, they put their 16-game winning streak on the line at home. The Rams and the Lions Sunday evening at 8 Eastern. All kinds of storylines in that game, right? With McVay and Goff and Stafford And then we have the Philadelphia Eagles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 8:15 Eastern in Tampa Bay. And the Eagles are currently 3-point favorites. And I can't tell you with confidence if AJ Brown is even going to play in that game. I don't know. I just saw earlier on social media that he deactivated his Twitter account and he deleted all things Eagles related off of his Instagram. I think he's done this before in the past. Maybe it's just the old LeBron James. Let's stay focused on the task at hand. I don't know. There's a lot of things going on in Philadelphia. So I'm gonna share my bracket. Hang on. We got some props. We got 10 props. I got probably 8 to 10 touchdown props. And we'll talk one and done here in a second, as well as some picks against the spread and some props. But I'm going to share the bracket. Welcome in, Daily Handle with Jordan Allen. Good afternoon, Means, and everybody. We have playoffs. Oh, baby. Lutess is in the house. Happy Friday, fam. Kyle Woods as well. Let's go. Happy Friday to you too, sir. Now you got a guy. Now you got to buy Peacock. Yeah, I guess so. All the Swifties be buying Peacock this weekend. So here's the bracket. It is a little chalky. Let's keep in mind, we did have a chalky bracket last year on this show. We did see 2 1 seeds go to the Super Bowl in Philadelphia and Kansas City. I do have a couple upsets here in the first round. So I'm going to start with the left side of the bracket. So here is my bracket for the NFL playoffs. And let's start with the 5-4 matchup in the AFC between the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans. The Browns checking in as 2.5 favorites. A Week 16 matchup between these two teams. We saw Joe Flacco light up the Texans secondary to the tune of 368 yards and 3 touchdowns. Amari Cooper had a big day, 265 yards, 11 grabs, 2 touchdowns on 15 targets. And Njoku, 6 grabs and a touchdown. It was a 36-22 win, but also something to keep in mind, it was 36-7 in the fourth quarter of that game before some garbage time stuff by the Texans. So it was really a blowout victory by Cleveland. Also something to keep in mind, of course, is very important. No CJ Stroud in that playoff game. It's tough to beat a team twice over a 2 to 3 week span. CJ is definitely ready for the moment, and I do believe that he is an absolute baller, a franchise quarterback. There's no question about it. He'll keep this Texans team in the game, but this Browns defense is legit, and this is why I lean Cleveland. They've allowed a league low 270 yards per game, 162 passing yards per game, 5.9 yards per attempt, and a 57% completion rate against opposing quarterbacks, all top marks in the NFL. And on the flip side, the Texans defense is just not that great. Solid against the run, 23rd in passing yards allowed, and they're 7.7 yards per attempt, the 3rd worst mark in football. Flacco's been impressive. He's got 13 touchdowns in his 5 games. I mentioned he's feeding Cooper and Njoku. Cooper over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns in his last 3. Njoku's top 90 receiving yards in 3 of his last 5. He's got 4 touchdowns over that span. So I think the defense will do enough to pull off the victory on the road. And again, CJ Stroud's first playoff game. Joe Flacco has double-digit playoff games on the road on his NFL resume. So that's where I think the game will be won, with the defense on the Cleveland side of things and Joe Flacco playing really good football. Get into some props in a little bit, but he is averaging over 300 passing yards per game. He's averaging 40 passing attempts. Since he's taken over, since week 13, the pass percentage from Cleveland is at 64%. It's the second highest mark in football. From week 1 to week 12, they were a bottom 10 team in terms of pass percentage. They were running the rock. They have let Joe Flacco chuck, and he has chucked. He's had some bad moments, but he's also thrown at least 2 passing touchdowns in every game as well. So I'm leaning with Cleveland to knock off the Houston Texans. Sticking inside the AFC, we'll look at the 6-3 matchup between the Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs. We've seen this line move from 3.5 to 4.5 and 5 in some spots. Also a rematch, a Week 9 rematch that saw the Chiefs take care of the Dolphins 21-14 in Germany. Both quarterbacks were held in check in that game. Not a lot of offense, really. 200 passing yards, under 200 passing yards for Tua and for Holmes in that game. Travis Kelce only had 13 yards. Tyreek Hill was limited to 62 receiving yards, his 4th lowest showing of the season. And it's not going to be easy for Miami here when you start to hear about the frigid temperatures at Arrowhead. Tua is 0-4 in games where the temperature is 45 degrees or colder. It sounds like it could be below 0 here for this game. I'm hearing that Kansas City fans or fans going to the game allowed to bring cardboard to sit on at these at this event here this weekend. It's going to be extremely cold. It's tough for Miami Of course, the track record for Tua, but also we know how powerful this offense is, right? We really do. The first or second in points, yards, passing yards, yards per attempt. However, Kansas City, the second fewest points and yards and fourth fewest passing yards, along with the third fewest yards per attempt. Also, second in sacks. It's only 3 teams that allowed fewer passing touchdowns than Kansas City this season. And I know Mahomes in this offense has struggled. They lead the league in drops. Really just haven't been the same offensive squad this year as in the past, but their defense will do enough to edge out Miami. I truly believe that. And it's not just the cold and playing in Kansas City. It's the injuries that this team has piled up over the past couple weeks. Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel, Jerome Baker. They're going to be without their top 3 pass rushers in this game. Mostert and Jalen Waddle are questionable. It sounds like they'll power through and maybe be active in this game, but they're not going to be 100%. I think that Miami isn't tough this week. This defense in Kansas City certainly legit. Pittsburgh and Buffalo, the other matchup inside the AFC here, the 7 and the 2 seed. Buffalo favored by 10. It features the largest spread of wildcard weekend, and the Bills have been playing must-win football since week 14, and all they've done is won football games. They enter as one of the hottest teams in the league, 5-0 to wrap up their season with W's against KC, Dallas, and Miami. Josh Allen's been held in check over the past couple of weeks, 1 or 0 passing touchdowns in 4 of his last 5, but they've had more of a balanced attack. You can actually feel this Bills team this season as opposed to other Bills squads since Joe Brady took over as the offensive coordinator. They're running the rock with James Cook, and I just like that. You can't just have Josh Allen chuck the ball 40-plus times. The defense is also playing really well. The Bills ranked 23rd in DVOA defense for the first 10 weeks, according to FTNFantasy.com. But through week 11 to 18, they're 3rd in DVOA defense, among being one of the top DVOA offenses in the entire throughout the entire season. So Buffalo ranks 8th in points, yards, passing yards, yards per attempt, rushing yards. The Steelers are only in the top half in one category, and it is running the football. Both teams have a top scoring defense, but the Steelers will be without their most important player, TJ Watt. And this is it. This is the stat. And I ripped it off ESPN. But this is the stat. This is the key reason why I feel like the Steelers are in tough. Pittsburgh is 69-33-2 with TJ Watt. They're 1-10 without TJ Watt. When he's on the field, they allow 19 points per game. When he's on the sidelines, they allow 25.8 points per game. I think because of the weather, the potential snow, the fact that the Steelers are running the football a little bit better. I know Mason Rudolph's playing good. I'm unsure about if they can score points. Like if this was in a dome, I think they would be in trouble. But the fact that we could see a lot of wind, we could see a lot of snow, Pittsburgh's been running the ball decent. That's kind of the Achilles heel of the Bills, stopping the run. Maybe that's the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers can keep things close, but I don't believe that they're going to be able to pull off the upset. Over in the NFC, we'll take a look at the 7-2 matchup here. The Cowboys are 7.5-point favorites against the Green Bay Packers. And credit to Jordan Love and GB. With an average team age of 25, they're the youngest squad in the playoffs, and they found a way to get in after winning 3 straight and 6 of 8 down the stretch. Green Bay ranks in the top half in points, yards, passing yards, yards per attempt, and rushing yards. They've racked up 150 rushing yards per game over their last 3. Aaron Jones has showed up at the right time of the season. That's also where I think this team can keep things close, run the rock, and Jordan Love can make some big plays as well. But the Cowboys have the edge in every single statistical category here on offense and on defense. They entered the playoffs as the league's number 1 scoring offense at 29.9 points per game. They're perfect 8-0 on the season at home, where they've averaged 38 points, just 15 against. And I understand some of their home opponents have not been great, but this is a team that's won 16 straight home games dating back to last year. Nobody can stop CeeDee Lamb. It just can't be stopped. He's got 12 touchdowns in his last 11 games, over 400 yards over his last 3. Dallas does typically make their fan base sweat things out, and that could happen this week. I think that the Packers will cover the spread, but I think that Dallas has a pretty good path with 2 home games here over the next couple of weeks to get to the NFC Championship game. I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys. We get into the 6-3 matchup between the Lions and the Rams, 3.5-point favorites here. Detroit, again, all kinds of storylines here in this game, a potential shootout as well. Matthew Stafford in Detroit against his former team, division champs for the first time since 1993. McVay against Jared Goff, the guy he traded away because he couldn't win the big game. You got a guy that could win the big game in Matthew Stafford, who has 15 touchdowns and just 3 interceptions over his last 6 games. The Rams, a league best 7-1 over their last 8, with their only loss to Baltimore in overtime. Stafford looked great against 2 top defenses in Baltimore and Cleveland over the past couple of weeks. I know that the Lions offense is extremely good. This is a team that finished 5th in points, 3rd in yards, 2nd in passing yards, 5th in rushing yards. But again, this Rams offense has been cooking lately. And I think, yeah, the Rams defense has got some questions, but I also think Detroit's defense has some massive questions as well. They've been one of the better teams at stopping the run, so maybe they can limit Kyron Williams here, but they've been awful against the pass. They ranked 23rd in points allowed, 27th in passing yards, and passing touchdowns allowed. Only the Cincinnati Bengals have coughed up more yards per attempt than Detroit. They struggle on deep passes in the middle of the field, and now they have to deal with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. According to our DVOA statistics, they are the 2nd worst team against wide receiver ones. Only Washington allowed more receiving yards than Detroit against wide receiver ones, and the 7th worst against wide receiver twos. I love Dan Campbell, but I really do wonder if he's going to regret playing Sam Laporta in Week 18. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to play. Khalif Raymond, I don't know if he's going to be able to play, and he's their punt return guy. Learn how to lose before you learn how to win, right? McVay knows a little bit about that, the experience that he has. This Rams just a couple teams years removed from winning the Super Bowl. And I think that they can pull off this upset. I have them winning this game. Covering is one of my favorite picks of the week. I know that the public is on. I don't care about any of that. I like this Rams team. And I think at 50-1 over at FanDuel, I think they're worth a shot. A little bit of a sprinkle to win the Super Bowl. Maybe the toughest matchup for me to call, Philly and Tampa Bay here, the 4-5 matchup on Monday night in Tampa Bay, and the Bucs checking in as 3-point home dogs here. And the Eagles, reigning NFC champion, Philadelphia Eagles, have looked anything but champs. This is also a rematch, Week 3. The Eagles took care of the Bucs pretty easily, 25-11. They ran all over them, but a lot has changed since then. Once 10-1 atop the NFL standings. Philly's lost 5 of their last 6, which includes losses to Arizona, the New York Giants, coughing up nearly 900 yards of offense in those 2 games. From Week 1 to Week 10, no team allowed fewer rushing yards per game than Philadelphia at 66 per. Since Week 11, they've coughed up 150 rushing yards per game. It's the 2nd most in football behind Seattle. They ranked 30th in points allowed, 26th in yards allowed, 31st in passing yards allowed. Only Washington has coughed up more passing touchdowns than the Eagles this season. And Tampa, I know that they have a bottom 10 offense. They're dead last in rushing yards per game. They can only muster 3 field goals in Carolina in a must-win situation in Week 18. But there's just a lot going on here in Philadelphia. They've struggled all year long inside the red zone, the play calling on offense. There's some questions there that I have when it comes to their offensive game. Defensively, again, just gave you the numbers. They haven't been able to stop the pass all year long, and now they can't stop the run. I really think that schedule ate them up. Playing KC in playing Buffalo and then playing Dallas and San Fran, and a lot of those teams were on extra rest. The Eagles had like 90 some odd snaps against the Bills on defense, and it looks to me like they're just a team that's dysfunctional for sure, but also tired and gassed. And I don't know if they can just flip the switch here. They're coming in not healthy at the moment. AJ Brown, his status remains up in the air. Devontae Smith didn't play last week. Jalen's dealing with the finger now. Talk about how painful it was. So I think this Philly team is in a lot of trouble. I think this is going to be an ugly game on offense, and I think the Bucs seem primed to pull it off. They'll lean on Rachaad White. Sounds like Darius Slay is going to be back, have his hands full with Mike Evans. I think Bradbury is going to have his hands full with Chris Godwin. So I think the Bucs are primed to pull off an upset, lean on the ground game, run the rock here, and the Bucs have showed me a lot more over the past couple weeks than the Philadelphia Eagles. Then we get into the divisional round. Let's start here with the Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. As I mentioned, I think that the Rams are a team that really could go toe-to-toe with San Francisco. I know Shanahan's had his number against McVay in the regular season, but a couple of years ago we saw McVay and Stafford take care of the San Francisco 49ers team. But ultimately, this game being in San Fran, having the extra rest, didn't play anybody really in Week 18 either. Brock Purdy's been fantastic this season. CMC's been a cheat code, and I think it's the defense that will do enough here for the San Francisco 49ers to get by the LA Rams. And then we have another kind of a layup matchup here for Tampa Bay, maybe an easier one than the matchup that they have against the Packers in the NFC wildcard round. I have the Dallas Cowboys extending their home winning streak to 18 games with a win against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of issues defensively for the Bucs through the air, and Dak Prescott and company should be able to light up this secondary against Tampa Bay. Let's go over to the AFC. We have a great matchup between Cleveland and Baltimore in the AFC divisional round. Two top defenses. These guys are 1 and 2 in terms of quarterback completion percentage against, yards per attempt, passing yards. They don't allow a whole lot. We saw Cleveland earlier give Lamar Jackson and the Ravens fits in a game this season where they got after him and had some pressure on the quarterback. But I like Baltimore as well, just like San Fran, having the extra time off, the extra rest. Some of their playmakers on defense, like Patrick Queen, is a guy that can get after the quarterback and make some things happen. Kyle Hamilton. There's a lot of playmakers on the Baltimore Ravens side of things. Roquan Smith. So I'm going to take Baltimore here at home in what should be an ugly offensive game. And the defense, maybe it's a Justin Tucker last-second field goal that gets them to the AFC Conference Championship game. Then another matchup here between the Chiefs and the Bills. These two teams, when they get together, it's must-watch TV. We've had some really nice playoff matchups between these two squads. The difference this year is Patrick Mahomes actually has to go on the road and play a playoff game where he's just had the luxury of playing the AFC Championship games and the divisional games at home. I lean with the Buffalo Bills here and Josh Allen to get it done. He's had some great games against Kansas City. I think the defense is playing a little bit better in Buffalo, and the offense in Kansas City has struggled. So it will be a tough environment for Mahomes to go into Buffalo for the first time and try to pull off a victory against Josh Allen. I like the Bills. Stick inside the AFC Conference Championship here, Buffalo and Baltimore. This is where I lean with the Baltimore Ravens. I think that Josh Allen could certainly do more than Lamar Jackson in this game, but I would just have to say that somebody outside of Stephon Diggs will have to step up in this game. The Bills, as I mentioned earlier, running the rock a lot better over the past couple of weeks and more balanced attack, but do they have enough to get by the Baltimore Ravens? Because the Ravens are going to be able to score some points. They should be able to score some points on the Bills. Their defense is going to be great. They have the edge defensively. I would say that Allen, it's close, but I would say I would lean with Allen over Lamar. But outside of Diggs, who is it? Gabe Davis has been too inconsistent. We haven't seen a whole lot from Dalton Kincaid down the stretch of the season. Somebody else is going to have to step up to beat Baltimore, and I just don't think it's going to happen. So I lean with the playmakers on the Ravens side of things. Maybe Mark Andrews is back at that point of the season as well. Likely he's given them something. Zay Flowers has played really good down the stretch of the season. They can run the rock, and the defense is just absolutely phenomenal. On the other side, in the NFC Conference Championship game, Dallas and San Francisco. If for whatever reason LA does get by, Dallas would, have a home game here, but we know that this team is very, very different on the road. Some massive home and away splits for not only the Cowboys offense, but for Dak Prescott dating back over the past couple of years. They have not fared well against San Francisco in this moment over the last couple of years as well. I give the coaching edge to Kyle Shanahan. I give the defensive edge to the San Francisco 49ers. And at the end of the day, it's all about Christian McCaffrey and trying to slow him down. So I like San Francisco over Dallas. I believe the matchup will be a little bit closer than the game we saw earlier this season in the regular season, but I do like San Francisco. And then we have a rematch of Super Bowl 47 from 2013. Do you remember at the Superdome when Beyonce just put the lights out in the game? That was a fantastic game. 34-31. Harbaugh brothers went at it. It was a Baltimore victory this time. I do believe that San Fran will get their revenge. The Ravens cooked the Niners and Brock Purdy in that game, but it is tough to beat a team a second time. There'll be some adjustments from Kyle Shanahan and the offense as well, and it should be a really good game if we get this Super Bowl. But again, I will go back to the play calling from Kyle Shanahan. I know he's had some issues winning that big game, but this is the one that I think he finally calls a great game. With some clock management issues thrown out the door. It's really just about CMC to me and Brock Purdy and all the yak monsters that are there in San Francisco with George Kittle, with Deebo Samuel, and Brendan Ayuk. And if we do get this Super Bowl, my goodness, it really should be a good one. And if you believe all the theories out there of the color schemes of the Super Bowl logo when the NFL puts it out, as you see there, San Fran and Baltimore colors, maybe it happens. That's not why I'm picking it. Let's relax. But ultimately, for me, what it comes down to is defenses. And these two defenses have played really good all season, especially Baltimore's. The play calling on both sides have been great. You got quarterbacks that can move the ball and playmakers all over the field. So there's a couple things that check boxes for me for teams making a legitimate Super Bowl run. Points scored certainly is one of them, but it's the defensive things, and that's where I've given the edge to Baltimore and San Fran. So let me know what you guys think. Love to hear. Shakir, baby, that's a guy that's really going to need to step up, Brett. Right? That's a guy, and he certainly could. He's had some nice moments here, but that's where I just have a little bit of pause when I pick Buffalo when I'm breaking down that Buffalo game with Baltimore. Is somebody's going to need to step up. I'm just not really sure who that guy could be. It could be Shakir, but I'm not completely confident in him. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. Again, I'm a coward. I really should kind of go with my gut here and have the Rams making a run. My gut bracket would be Rams and Cowboys into the NFC Championship game. And the Cowboys probably getting the better of the Rams at home. Just that would be a tough path for LA with all those road games. It may catch up to them, and Dallas has been really good at home. But nothing would change for me on the NFC on the AFC side of things. It really is Baltimore. I think that Cleveland will be the toughest test should they get by the Texans for the Baltimore Ravens, just because divisional rival, it'd be the third time those two teams played. Defensively, both fantastic. And Flacco, say what you want about Joe Flacco, but dude's got more playoff experience than any other quarterback playing in the playoffs. And he's won an MVP, right? And he's played a lot of road games. Like, I looked at the playoff log for the game log for him, and I remembered some road games that I was like, really 13 road games? And makes sense because the Pats were always the number one seed, and it was always Baltimore having to go on the road. So let me know your guys' thoughts. Love to hear from you. Yeah, Browns could make a run. They could be the surprise team because of their defense. Nathan says he thinks the 49ers beat the Ravens if it happens. Lou says, I only have one bet in pocket so far, and it's Pittsburgh plus 10. Just feels like too many points to be giving them if the weather is, in fact, as windy as it says. So I'm going to, before I share my props, one and done lineup, some touchdown stuff, this is what I'm rolling with here for some picks. I like KC 4.5. I'm with you, Lou. I like Pittsburgh plus 10 to cover this game, and I like the Packers plus 7.5 as well to cover. I think they're running the rock really nice. Jordan Love could surprise some people. Again, Dallas sometimes, man, they, just a couple weeks ago, we've seen them at home a couple times. The home schedule hasn't been too difficult for them, as I mentioned earlier. But remember the game in Seattle, they were massive favorites. Seattle was great in that game. Detroit, really, you can make the case that they should have won that football game. They were big time, 6.5 point favorites. So I think Green Bay can hang. Might be some garbage time stuff there. If they start off strong with some offense, maybe they can run the rock with Aaron Jones. You can run on Dallas. So those teams to cover, and Cleveland to win on the money line. I like the Rams plus 3.5. It is my favorite pick, but as you guys saw with my bracket, I am leaning them with the upset here. And Tampa Bay, I don't know how much more I can go into this thing. It's really difficult to call, not just because I'm rocking a Philly sweater. It's because when I look at the two teams from a talent standpoint, there's no comparison. It's night and day. I think Philadelphia's got much more talent, but it's the scheme, it's the coaching, it's the disconnect. It's now the injuries. It's the fact that you have to go on the road. They haven't shown me anything at the start of the season. You could even say when they were 10-1 that they shouldn't have won the game against Kansas City, if not for, a couple bogus calls, that they shouldn't have won the game against Buffalo. They lucked out into a couple wins earlier in the season, thanks to Jake Elliott's foot. So, you can take away some of those wins. You can't do it. But at the same time, the record, I think, is better than the play on the field. It's been a really bad red zone offense, and now they can't stop the run. So I think that they're in tough. Maybe I'm crazy here. I know a lot of sharp people are on the Philadelphia Eagles, but I think plus 3 is the way to go. And if you hear that AJ Brown can't play or is ruled out, that number is going to change. So I jump on the plus 3 for me right away. LA and Detroit, a lot of offense, right? A lot of offense on both sides. Talked about the Lions giving up some big explosive plays, and we know Detroit is great at home, and Jared Goff as well. The difference, even if Laporta was playing, maybe I'd be a little hesitant. But I just think with the Rams and how well they're playing, and the fact, let's be honest, Nick Mullins had 800 passing yards in 2 games and 4 touchdowns, week 16 and week 18 against the Lions. The Lions are trying to win those football games. Nick Mullins, right? We saw Stafford have great games against the Browns and Baltimore. Those are top 2 pass defenses. So I think Detroit could be in tough here. And then the under between the Steelers and Buffalo, this is a really, really low number. But I'm not a weatherman. You keep an eye on this thing, but it does sound like it's going to be pretty sloppy. And I don't know how much Pittsburgh's going to throw the football. Both of these quarterbacks have very low passing yard numbers. Allen continues to plummet, and I don't even think Rudolph's over 180 passing yards. So I think both teams are going to run the rock there quite a bit. And, defensive score, you're in trouble, but I'm going to lean with the under there. And same thing in Philly and Tampa. And I get it. It's too easily. You look at this matchup and you say, oh, well, the Bucs and the Eagles are near the bottom in terms of passing yards allowed and big plays. This is going to be shooted all over the place. I just don't really think that that's going to be the case. Philadelphia should lean on the ground game here, try to keep that defense off the field. They did have a lot of success running against Tampa Bay earlier in the season. Let's see if they try to go back to that recipe this week. I got the money line parlay as Cleveland, KC, Dallas, Buffalo at plus 300. And then I have a teaser alternate spread. This is from DraftKings. Just tease down. I think it's a good opportunity. You can make fun of teasers all you want. Obviously, the odds change. At the end of the day, it's just earning a profit. I think Kansas City, Buffalo, and Dallas win the games this weekend. And I have them all teased down to 2.5. Let's win those games at home by a field goal. And let's have the Rams keep this thing within a touchdown at plus 7. That pays plus 281. Let's head on over to some props for the week. Again, a lot I like here. These are in order of how I like them. I'm going to start here with David Njoku at over 54.5 receiving yards. I talked earlier about the change in terms of Cleveland's offense since Joe Flacco has taken over, and credit to the Browns, because this is the first time in NFL history we've seen a team make the playoffs with 4 different starting quarterbacks. The over 54.5 is what I have in the tracker. I think this may be 55.5 now, but what you see on the board is what we put in the tracker. There could be some change in lines, but you're subbed with us. That's the benefit. We jump in early, we get some of these lines, but nonetheless, going to talk about some of these plays here. I'm going to start with David Njoku over 54.5 receiving yards. Again, from week 13 to 17, since Flacco has taken over, he leads the NFL in air yards, 1,900 yards, over 1,600 pass attempts, 204. That's 40 pass attempts per game and 323 passing yards per game. The 64% pass rate in a neutral game script over that span using the splits tools is number 2 in all of football. From week 1 to week 12, 54%, bottom 10. And nobody's benefited more than David Njoku and Amari Cooper. Njoku's got 45 targets in those 5 games. It's the 9th most in football since week 13. He's got 90-plus receiving yards in 3 of his last 4. He only had 44 in that week 16 matchup against the Texans. But again, it was 36-6 in the fourth quarter. And there was some garbage time stuff there. And Flacco didn't really have to throw the ball in the fourth quarter, even though he had 42 attempts and 368 yards in that game. I think that Stroud can keep this thing closer. Could mean more pass attempts in the fourth, potentially. But also the Texans secondary has got some issues here. 7.7 yards per attempt, 3rd most. Not great against tight ends. 8.1 targets per game to tight ends, 5.9 catches, and 64.7 receiving yards. The catches and the yards to tight ends, the 2nd most to the position. So Njoku is a mismatch, and he's getting leaned on, and I don't think they're going to be able to run the rock. Texans are pretty good on the ground game, and Ford's not he doesn't really blow me away as a between the tackles type of runner. So I like all these pass catchers receiving yards. I like Cooper as well. He's not on this board at 72.5 receiving yards. He had the monster game against the Texans, and he's had a ton of targets, like double-digit targets really is what he's averaging over the last 3 with Flacco. Matthew Stafford over 272 passing yards here. As I mentioned earlier, league best 7-1 over the last 8. Good games against the Ravens and Cleveland, 279 against Cleveland, 294 against Baltimore, top 2 pass defenses. He's averaging 295 passing yards over his last 5, and he's had 279 plus in 4 of those games. Mentioned Detroit, 27th most passing yards allowed and passing touchdowns. Also like Stafford have 2 passing touchdowns in this game at minus 130. Only Cincy has allowed more yards per attempt. I mentioned Mullins, 411 and 396 in week 16 and week 18. He had 4 touchdowns. I like Puka Nacua at over 5.5 grabs, also over 73.5 receiving yards. Detroit, 3rd most yards to wide receivers, ranked 31st in DVOA versus wide receiver 1s. Only Washington allowed more at 89 per game, Detroit, and they ranked 7th worst to wide receiver 2s. And according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, Nacua will be lined up with Kindle Vildor, who's allowed the 7th most yards per route run covered out of all the corners that are playing this week. I like Cooper Kupp too, but I'm leaning here with Puka Nacua, Matthew Stafford, and I like the 2 passing touchdowns there for him as well. Josh Allen, the rushing attempts over 8.5. I jumped on this when I heard about the weather, but also Allen's been running a lot, and this is what he does in the playoffs. 15 attempts, 11 attempts over his last 2, 8 plus, and 5 of his last 6. Sloppy weather, maybe some RPOs, a lot of runs. You got the tush push there, which they've run multiple times. They were perfect. I think 25 for 25 before the game against Miami, where they failed a couple times, but they've been using that play quite a bit as well. So the over rushing attempts for Josh Allen. I like DeAndre Swift over 59.5 rushing yards here as well. I mentioned earlier in the season when the Eagles played Tampa, they did lean on the ground game, and he had a great game. He's 16 carries, 130 yards. No, a lot has changed, but 19 plus attempts for DeAndre Swift in 5 of his. That's Rashad White. We'll get into White in a second. Just sticking with Swift. His rushing yards, 61 plus in 3 straight games. His last 5 with at least 12 carries, he is top 60 rushing yards. So let's give him 12 plus carries. I think he's going to live in the 15, 16 range. He's not hurt. He missed week 18 because of an illness. It sounds like he's going to be good to go. And with just these wide receivers banged up and Jalen Hurts' his finger issue here, maybe they actually do run the rock 30 plus times in this game with multiple backs and Jalen Hurts. So I'm taking the over 59. As for Rashad White, over 63.5 rushing yards here. I like a lot of Rashad White's props. I also like the over 91.5 rushing and receiving. That one actually may be the safer play because this is a guy that's got 4 plus catches in 3 straight games and 64 grabs in the season, 50 last year as a rookie. But 19 plus rushing attempts in 5 of his last 6. So I like the over 16.5 rushing attempts for him as well. And I mentioned this Eagles run defense, not great. Over 150 rushing yards since week 11. It's the second most. We've seen multiple running backs who have struggled all year have good games against Philadelphia. Most notably, Kenneth Walker had his most efficient game against the Eagles on Monday Night Football when those 2 teams played each other earlier in the season. It was only a couple weeks ago. Saw Saquon Barkley have 80 yards against them on the ground. We saw James Conner and even Michael Carter run all over this defense as well. So I like the attempts. I like the rushing yards. I like the total rushing receiving yards as well. In fact, there's a bunch of running backs I like for the rushing attempt prop. Aaron Jones is not on this list, over 15.5. I think they lean on the ground game. I did put Isaiah Pacheco over 15.5 rushing attempts on this list, and Najee Harris over 14.5 rushing attempts at minus 125. I actually have over 15.5 in the tracker. So the 14.5 is something, if you haven't already bet it, you can jump on this one because I do believe that the Steelers are just going to say, hey, listen, we're just going to try to run the ball. That's it. The last couple of games since Mason Rudolph's taken over, they have moved the ball on offense, and they've run the ball a lot better as well. The attempts for Harris, 26, 27, and 19 over the last 3 games. He's topped 100 yards in 2 of those 3, 78 in the other one. He only had 75 plus in 2 of his first 14 games this season. He's having his best games over the past couple of weeks. Rudolph has something to say about that as well, but 'tis the season, I suppose, for Mason. But Najee Harris getting the attempts, and then Isaiah Pacheco as well. Isaiah Pacheco was leaned on in his last game against the Bengals, 18 attempts. And I think that they're going to run the rock here in this game. The defense is going to put them up in situations to be successful on offense. The over 15.5 attempts, and I lean on the over 64 rushing yards for Isaiah Pacheco as well. This guy just runs hard, man. He really does. It's going to be a cold game. It's going to be really tough to tackle. And Pacheco's he was fantastic last year through the Super Bowl run that the Chiefs had. And if you just look at the last few games, even Miami, 16 for 66, 19 for 89 against the Eagles. Again, run defense, 15 for 55, 18 for 110 against the Packers, against the Bengals, 18 for 130. So he is looking healthy at this moment, and he's running the rock really well. Got Chris Godwin in there at over 54.5 receiving yards. I expect Slay to be on Evans. I think Evans could have a decent game as well. I know Baker's not 100% at the moment, but Bradbury's been among the leaders in yards allowed per route run covered. He looks a little slow to me, in my opinion. The Eagles have been teams are eating them up, man, in the middle of the field and in the slot. So Godwin, disappointing season, but he does have 45 targets over his last 5 weeks, which is top 10 in football. He's had some decent games lately too, 81 yards, 78 yards, 155 yards in 3 of his last 4. The Eagles 31st in passing yards allowed, 31st in passing touchdowns allowed. And I think plus 270 is a decent little sprinkle on Godwin to score a touchdown. But I do believe that if Baker is a little bit banged up and the Eagles can get some pressure, which they haven't this year compared to last year, they could get the ball out quickly there, and that will benefit a guy like Chris Godwin. He's going to have a big game for KC to have a shot. That's Pacheco. That is, I assume there. Let's keep things going. We'll save the one and done lineup here for the last segment. We got some touchdowns here. Just going to rattle them off. I think, my analysis of things that I've already talked about will tie in. Cooper Kupp at plus 125. I'm going to take this every time here for him to score a touchdown, a high total game, 50 plus points. I think we'll see some offense on both sides. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I would pick Sam Laporta. I've been doing it all year long. He's a big player for the Lions inside the red zone, but yikes, maybe not playing in this game. Amon-Ra, I think, is a guy that could rack up, honestly, like 14, 15 targets in this game. So those two guys, a little bit chalky, plus 125 for Kupp, plus 110 for Amon-Ra St. Brown. David Njoku, talked about him earlier, just a mismatch. The fact that they're chucking the football more, and he's got 4 touchdowns over his last 4 games, and they've been with Flacco. He's been, and Cooper's on this list for me too. I just think that they're going to throw the ball 40 plus times. It's the way that you beat the Texans, and those are the two guys that are going to get the targets from Joe Flacco. Nico Collins is on this list at plus 162. That'd be the guy, the Texan, that I would say could score this weekend. I got Jake Ferguson here. It's just tough to get behind anybody else. I mean, there's just a lot of juice in that game with Dallas, but Ferguson's been pretty good this season, among the leaders in red zone targets. Cowboys offense at home. Most of his touchdowns have come at home. So I'm going with Ferguson. Travis Kelce's actually plus money, but it's been Rashee Rice that has been the guy that's shown us a lot this season. He's got 7 receiving touchdowns. He had 3 over his final 6 games, and he was really getting a lot of looks ever since that bye week. You can go to week 10, 10 targets. Week 11, 12. Oh my goodness, bats. Week 12, 10 targets. Week 13, 9 targets. Week 14, 10 targets. Week 15, 9 targets. Week 16, 6 targets. This guy has been the go-to guy for Patrick Mahomes. He is a yak monster, among the leaders in yards after the catch, among the leaders in red zone targets as well. Rashee Rice, I know it's not a great price, but plus 115 there. And then we have some longer shots at the bottom of this list. Najee Harris, plus 230. Luke Musgrave, who returned to action last week, he is 5-1 to score a touchdown. Leonard Fournette is plus 650. I think this is why they got Leonard Fournette. Cook has been great down the stretch. Fournette, playoff Lenny, anybody, bad weather, short yardage situations. The one issue is when they get near the goal line, it's going to be Josh Allen, but I think plus 650 is a little bit of a sprinkle. And you see there on the bottom, some chalky touchdown calls here. There's actually one missing from that board. The parlay is Josh Allen, Isaiah Pacheco. We got Kyron Williams. And the fourth guy that is missing from that board, just give me a second, is Jalen Hurts. So there's some chalky guys there. Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, these guys are scoring rushing touchdowns every single week, basically. And then we included Pacheco and Kyron Williams in there. It's just they're too juicy to take as singles. But the way that Kyron Williams has been scoring this season and all the touches and the usage that he gets, it's like 100% of the touches, right, out of the backfield inside the red zone over the past few weeks. So Kyron Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts at DraftKings. That's a parlay at plus 819. If you only wanted to bet one or two of these guys, I would be taking David Njoku, Cooper Kupp, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and probably Jake Ferguson. Just to go to some high total games and maybe avoid some of the weather that we're going to have this weekend and take a look at some games inside the dome. All right, one and done. Oh, baby. I love this format. I think it's fantastic. If you're unfamiliar, you can just play one guy and that is it. You cannot play them again. So the strategy behind the one and done is a couple things. You see some Rams on the board here, and I like the Rams, so that may confuse you just a touch, but I'm going to walk through my strategy here, but there's multiple strategies that you can take. You take players that you don't feel will win football games. I don't want to just play, like there's a couple different running back options here. Singletary, Najee Harris, maybe Aaron Jones, maybe DeAndre Swift, Rashad White. The reason I'm not playing Najee Harris is I think that the ceiling is limited. I want to, at the same time, look for some points. I want to get some scoring this week. I don't want to be too far behind the 8 ball. I don't want to be playing Singletary. I don't want to be playing Najee. I don't want to be playing George Pickens or Deontay Johnson, just because I don't think that they'll advance and I want to use them next week. I want to play Tyreek Hill as my flex. I think this is the time you got to play Tyreek Hill, right? If Miami moves on, then Miami moves on and you can look at some of their other options next week, but I don't think that they will win this game. And Tyreek Hill, we know that what his upside and what his ceiling is like. So this guy is in my lineup. Some other options, some wide receivers that I think, you could play that won't move on. Like, again, there's questions surrounding AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, but those are two options. Tampa Bay with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Jaden Reed's been fantastic for the Packers over the past couple of weeks. You could play Amari Cooper. You could play David Njoku. You could play Nico Collins. But this is why I've rolled this way. I think that with the weather in Kansas City, the weather potentially in Buffalo, I'm going to avoid pretty much the entire AFC. My lineup here for the iTunes and Spotify, it's been up on the screen for a little bit. It's Matthew Stafford at the quarterback position. It's Aaron Jones at running back, Devon Achane at running back, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp at wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown at wide receiver, David Njoku as my tight end, Tyreek Hill as my flex. I have the Browns as my defense, kind of going back and forth between the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Browns as my defensive squads. But the reason I'm rolling with this game, it's in a dome. I expect a lot of points, 50 plus. Yes, I do believe that the Rams are going to win this football game. If they do, they'll have a matchup against San Fran. I'm not going to really want to play them against San Francisco. And I think that the Niners are going to win that game should we get to it. If Detroit moves on, we'll still have some other options there. We would have used Amon-Ra. Most likely he had a big game because they moved on. Maybe Sam Laporta is ready to go the following week. But my thinking is here, let's attack the highest scoring game in a dome with some points. Let's get off to a very, very hot start here. Next week, there are things that we can do with the Cowboys, potentially playing either the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, brutal pass defense, the Philadelphia Eagles, brutal pass defense, or the Detroit Lions, brutal pass defense. So we can load up potentially on some Dallas Cowboys next week, whether that's Dak and CeeDee Lamb. Let's not waste CeeDee Lamb in this spot here against Green Bay. He's going to actually have a better matchup next week against, like I said, those potential three opponents and weaker pass defenses. We can load up on some Cowboys. We can save San Fran for the NFC Conference Championship round. And if the Rams do squeak by, or it is the Lions to squeak by, we will have some other options. My thinking here is to stay on the NFC side of the bracket. Let the AFC kind of take shape. And when you get to the Super Bowl, you're going to have some options there at the AFC. You can have a full Bills stack. You can have a full KC stack. You can have a full Baltimore stack. And heck, if the Browns surprise us all, we can have a Brown stack there. With some options as well. I just don't want to touch much in the Buffalo and Pittsburgh game. I don't want to touch much in the KC and Miami game. I think those are going to be low scoring. And then next week, not going to really want to touch much between Cleveland and Baltimore with those two defenses. Not going to want to play Lamar against Cleveland. And you could have the option between Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes in that game, but also could be very sloppy weather inside the AFC. It's just, I think that there's more scoring and opportunity inside the NFC here. So that's the one and done lineup. That's my thinking behind it. That's the strategy. Should we get the Super Bowl matchup that I think we may get, we will have some options to stack here with Baltimore on that side. And maybe you'll still have a couple San Fran players, right? Maybe you can still have one or two. You didn't use all of them against the Rams. I wouldn't go tremendously all in, but again, round two for me, the divisional round, will be a lot of Dallas stacks. So that's, I think, a little bit different. I don't know if everyone kind of takes that strategy. I think most people will probably be like, you know what, I'm going to roll out a couple Packers here this week. I'm going to roll out maybe a couple Dolphins, maybe a couple Steelers. And I just think if you're in a shallow league, you could maybe get away with that. But I think if you're in a deep league, a deep one and done pool with like 60 plus, you're going to want to get some points off the hop. So, all right, that's it. We did it. We wrapped up. Any other questions, guys? We're going to get out of here. I think that's it. We rolled through some props, we rolled through some touchdowns, we rolled through some picks against the spread. We talked about the loser bracket I have and the one and done strategy there as well. So we are going to wrap up. We're going to get out of here. Playoff football, nothing better. It should be a fantastic weekend of playoff football. Check out ftnbets.com. We're going to have more picks, more props, find some edges, especially when I see some of these other numbers come out. Promo code FTN wins on the bottom of the screen. Save yourself a little bit of cash there. We have projections, rankings, one and done stuff. We have all kinds of content over at FTN. So good luck, guys, with all your picks, all your one and done pools with your teams. And we appreciate you, Nathan. Have a good weekend, friends. Enjoy the football. And we'll be back to next week to wrap it all up. Oh, there was, I think, maybe a question here. Oh, yeah, Joshua, maybe I'll get some hockey stuff. Yeah, it's a good call. I didn't, to be honest with you, I haven't even really looked at the board. There's 2 games, but I will, I'll take a look at the hockey stuff before we get out of here. We did have a pretty good day yesterday for in the article, so maybe let's try to carry this over. Kyle Woods, pretty heavy in the NFC, mostly LA, Detroit, with the expectation of Goddard, Tyree, considering a pivot from Sun God to Tampa. Wide receiver first round is flex. So Goff, Love now, but considering Stafford or Baker as well. Yeah, I would roll with Stafford. I know people, when they're drafting, I would say like things are a little bit different. If you have like a draft and hold as opposed to the one and done, I think what's important for me when I actually ranked like Bills and Cowboys players pretty high because I have them, of course, going to the conference championship games, but I think clearly it's important to have, more games, right? You get San Fran and Baltimore on the bye. I think I can say with confidence, we're going to get 2-3 games from Dallas here. Unless there's some sort of Detroit-Dallas matchup, and that could happen, right? We could see Detroit win the game, Philly or Tampa win the game, and have to play San Fran. Then we'll load up on maybe San Fran, and then we would just take the Detroit and Dallas options in the third round of the conference championship. But I think if you're just drafting, you're having a draft with your buddies, first player off the board, maybe Lamar Jackson, Purdy, or something like that. But I think Dak and CeeDee Lamb and Allen and Diggs, just try to get as much as your final 4 as you can. And sometimes, it really does, your strategy does change. I remember here on our FTN Network YouTube page, when the Rams won the Super Bowl, we did a draft on Jake's show. It was Seeley, myself, and Ratcliffe. And I think maybe there was a 4th, but I fell into the Rams. Everybody else was drafting other players, and I fell into Los Angeles. It worked out well for me. It wasn't a team that I thought I would go in to stack, but it's just the way that the board fell. Sometimes these things happen. I think stacking is very important, right? You want to stack, you kind of want to go in on 1 or 2 teams. And sometimes the way the board falls, you fall into different stacks. I got lucky with Stafford and Cup and it worked out. I would say, yeah, whatever. Goff and Stafford, Superflex, get all the points, right? You think, and then you're going to lose one of those quarterbacks next week, but there's going to be other options for you and save some of the AFC options for a little bit later on. That's, I don't mind that. All right, hockey. Honestly, I am just looking at the board for the first time, so we'll walk through thoughts together. Dallas Stars, Nashville Predators. This Stars team is cooking on offense. They're playing really good they're one of my favorite teams. They're juice on the money line. I'm going to like this team in 60. I'll probably, let's see, just in straight sides, it's a 2-unit play for me. 2-unit play for Dallas minus 125. This is what I'm going to put in the tracker immediately. What I'm going to walk through here is what I'm going to put in the tracker as soon as I'm done. Just been heavy football here this morning. So Dallas 2 units, minus 125 to win in 60, win in regulation. This is from DraftKings. And then maybe the 1 unit for them to win on the puck line. For them to win by 2, I'm seeing plus 140. Use the prop shop or the parlay calculator, get the best possible number here. Plus 145 over at Bet365 for the Dallas Stars. I like Philly on the money line. It's in Minnesota. I could lean with Philly. It's not one of my favorite plays, but just given a take on the other game, the way that they're playing hockey has been pretty good. I think Minnesota's going through some things. They're super thin on offense and on defense. I know Kaprizov practiced today, but he's not going to play in this game. They're without Gustafsson between the pipes. Faber's just racking up all kinds of ice time. I mean, Jordan, there's only 2 games on the ice tonight, so there's really no upset to call. I would, if you're just looking for a plus money play, you just take the Stars. I take the Stars plus 145 on the puck line, or get them in 60 minus 125. As for props, Bet365 users, we're going to go to the 2 top lines in Dallas. Roope Hintz and Jason Robertson playing really good at the moment, especially Jason Robertson. Cold start to the season. You could do a Robertson, Hintz, Pavelski, same game parlay. All 3 of these guys to pick up points. All of them pick up points. Then the other one would be the second line in Mason Marchment, Tyler Seguin, and Matt Duchene. That's probably pays 4-1. So that's where I would start. Both lines have been great. We hit this one in the Stars last game. They both were successful. As for a straight up prop, I would look at Tyler Seguin. Tyler Seguin has been really good. He is minus 130 for a point tonight. So that's where I would start. Tyler Seguin, minus 130 for a single prop. And then I would go to Jason Robertson shot prop, because I know that shot props, I've been kind of shying away from them. I haven't loved them, but that's a pretty good price at plus 130 for him to have 4 shots, even for him to have an assist at minus 105. I just really like that the way that that line is playing. The Preds give up a lot of quality chances at 5-5, and the goaltending has been suspect. I'd say the better price would be a Pavelski assist at plus 140 than Jason Robertson. He is the shooter. So let's go Tyler Seguin for a point. Let's go Jason Robertson for 4 shots. Let's go Joe Pavelski for the assist. And then those top 2 lines, same game parlay for points. On the Nashville side of things, Gustav Nyquist, minus 120 for a point. And as good as the Dallas Stars have been, the goaltending has just been okay, right? Wedgwood's played a lot of hockey lately. They had Murray there making his debut, and he picked up a shutout. That was a really fun story for the young buck to pick that up. But Gustav Nyquist here, I'm just going to look at the back of the hockey card to get the exact numbers for you guys. But he's basically been a point per game guy over the last 3 or 4 weeks, playing up on that top line and playing a lot of power play. Yeah, he checks in, riding a 6-game point streak. He's hit the score sheet in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So he's got a 9-game point streak tonight. So he is minus 120. It's crazy that he's minus 120. He's got an assist in 6 straight games, and he's plus 150 for an apple tonight. But I would just take the point for Nyquist and move along from that game. The other game, Philly and Minnesota, I don't have anything on the Minnesota side of things. For Philadelphia, one guy that really stood out to me the other night was Owen Tippett. Tortorella really does, man, he must have changed his lines against the Habs the other night 5 or 6 times. He had Couturier and Konechny together the entire time. I just want to see from Daily Faceoff. He's got Farabee up there again. Sean Couturier and Travis Konechny, that would be a same game parlay for me, for those 2 guys to pick up a point. I'm just not sure if, there was multiple shifts where Farabee was up on that top line and Tippett was up on that top line. I would just take Couturier and Konechny for points. You'd get plus money on that for these guys to both pick up a point. It's just, I would say they're both too juiced to take as a single. Sean Couturier minus 145 is okay. I'll probably put that one in the tracker. I wish that Konechny was at that price, but he's just been too good. Books have caught on to him, and we're just not going to be able to get a really good number for him. Minus 180 is just not good enough for him. But I do like Tippett shots. Owen Tippett shots plus 100 over at Bet Rivers for him to have 4 shots. This Minnesota team they've been struggling. They've been struggling defensively. They're giving up a whole lot. I mentioned they're thin. They got a rookie in Faber. He's great, but he's playing like 24, 25, 26 minutes here and there. Tippett's last few games, 7, 4, 3, and 5 shots. 20 plus minutes, and 2 of his last 3. He's got goals in back-to-back as well. Man, he hit like 3 or 4 bars the other night against the Habs. All right, so that's what I'm thinking. Joshua, Dallas, puck line, Dallas in 60, Tyler Seguin point, Jason Robertson 4 shots. We got the Robinson, Hintz, Pavelski line to pick up a point, maybe a little sprinkle on a 2-point night for them. Then we have the Seguin, Marchment, and Duchene line to pick up a point. If you can do it at 365, no DraftKings now offers it. And then in the other game, we'll go with Sean Couturier a point. We'll go with Sean Couturier and Travis Konechny if you can. Do a same game parlay with those guys. And we'll take Owen Tippett for 4 shots. Only 2 games on the ice is like, I think 14 or 15 tomorrow. So I'll have an article out tomorrow with some picks and some prize pick stuff. But hit me up if you guys have any questions at Chris Meaney. We are going to officially get out of here now. So good luck, guys, to everybody on the ice. the gridiron. Enjoy the football, and we will talk to you guys very soon. Cheers.